about the meaning of life. It's only about a number of sub-disciplines that pursue questions that have long troubled philosophers. The problem with this, however, is that you have to be a little, how should I put it, delusional to think that you're going to solve some of these intractable questions, like in epistemology, how do we justify our beliefs? Like in ethics, how do we support ethical arguments? In metaphysics, what's the nature of what is real? Are some locutions of language real, or are these questions are intractable? And they're also somewhat peripheral to bigger questions, like what is the meaning of my life? That's the question that we want answered. But notice, it's not what's the meaning of life. There's no specific person we have in view when we ask that question. The real question is, what is the meaning of my life? What is the meaning of your life? That's an important question. And it's, unlike other topics, it's a question that I think can be answered. You're the one contemplating the factors involved in answering it. You take into account your inclinations, and you discern what is the purpose of your life. Well, I think there is an objective part of this question that is not purely isolated to the other question of what is the meaning or purpose of my life. I think there's a common thread that will be knit throughout the answer to all of these, and it will involve, or should involve love overall. I think the wisest sages and religious teachers of history have taught us that love is the highest expression. Love is the purest emotion. It is the heavenly mindset. It is the most patient, the most open, the most joyous. Read Paul's list. But an interesting point presents itself in philosophizing about love. First of all, there's the danger that it will be atomized into different forms, unrecognizable to each other, such as romantic love, friendship love, familial love, all these different forms that love takes. And yet, I think colloquially, at least, the sense of one giving oneself to another in some capacity, to transcend those boundaries, that is the essence of love. Because it's the one thing that I think all of us can say is the purpose of our lives. Near-death experiencers often mention that what they regretted most in life was not loving. I can't see how that view is wrong. Whatever your skepticism or credulity is in believing these stories, I think there's teachings in them. And the most obvious one is that when these people go through a tunnel, see a life review, talk to God, this eminent, this bright light of love they describe it as, they realize that seemingly the place, the universe, are humble beginnings in the evolutionary timeline, our frailty in the wars we create even over our supposedly righteous doctrines. All these things are deeply troubling, and not to mention some of our genetic variations, mental retardation, autism, various diseases. The struggle makes it as if there's no meaning, there's no higher purpose, and I am deeply troubled by the exceptions to the story of there is meaning to life writ large. But I think that variation is the key to love, that it's what's necessary for love. There's the subject and the object, and you need differences between them for love to take place. You need resources and lack of resources, and that's emotional and financial and all of those. And so someone whose child is born autistic doesn't fit into some narratives about us being created in the image of God and so on, but it does fit into the idea that we're here to grow in love, and the challenge of having autistic children. I think we need to accept that, because the more in tune we are with the end state here, which is cultivating the spirit of love into this painting of your character, this internal spiritual painting that you're constructing your entire life. That is the painting of you that you carry to God, or you carry into a hellish existence of isolation. It depends on what feelings you cultivate. Now, that raises serious questions about some of us, about the nature of some of us. We're born with depression, with poor neural transmitters, and so what then? If you experience darkness, rainy days every day, then are you somehow predisposed or predetermined towards the hellish state in this life and after? That's an important question. But again, I think God is love. I think God is judicious. Every example you can raise of how God might not be is an expression of lack of faith, really. I mean, of course God takes children to heaven if they die. Of course God has mercy on the troubled youth who gets involved in crime. Raising these questions, there's a certain insincerity in kind of saying, well, God is going to do the wrong thing. Of course not. God is just. God is loving. And the tensions that have traditionally been drawn between those two conceptions, I think, are misleading. I think there is ultimate harmony. I think there is ultimate harmony in the deepest frontiers of science suggest that very thing. Quantum physics, I think, with the early fathers of quantum physics, is suggestive of consciousness being vital to this dimension. And that's curious. The fact that evolution would produce creatures such as us is curious. And a number of curiosities add up to making this conception that love is somehow central to our existence. It makes it very plausible. It makes it much less the dream of some mystic, and much more the reality that we encounter and must encounter. Some have tried to commit suicide, and they go to the presence, and God will say to them, you have more to accomplish. You have work to be done. I think it's safe to conclude that if you are alive right now, you have work to be done. I have work to be done, and I think that work is work to be done, and I think that work is primarily a matter of learning how to love. All other questions fade into the background. And if they don't, they ought to. Because life is about love. I hope I don't forget that. I hope no one does.